Okay, so the purpose of this video is going to be to guide you through the process of um, finding and pulling down spatial data sets from the IPUMSTerra website. So this is a great website. It's completely free. It's funded through NSF and is run through the University of Minnesota. A lot of different projects go on with this. In particular interest to you might be some of the work that's done more associated to classrooms. So they even have some of their projects in the classrooms linked here that you can look at, and you'll find that this project specifically was using CODAP, which was the Common Online Data Analysis Platform, which is also the tool that we'll discuss in our article the use of as well. But this is an additional kind of area that you can come to for getting started supports that are on the webpage here, and these involve some videos as well that can help you kind of see some ways that you might use this spatial data in a classroom. So going back to the homepage here, one of the first things you'll want to do is actually register with ipums.org. What you do that for is essentially to be allowed to download the data sets themselves. If you go to their tutorials, they will help you with that. I'm going to go ahead and actually log in myself so that I can use the account. Once you log in, it takes you immediately to the data menu here. These are the tutorials that I was referring to over here on the bottom left-hand side. We're going to focus on area level data. Something interesting you can do though is if you take the time to register through IPUMSTerra, you can get microdata. The difference being that at the microdata level, what you're seeing is your observational units are individual people, versus at the area level, which is where we're going to focus, our observational units are going to be geographic units. Specific to the data set that we're going to use, we're going to take a look at what's referred to as PUMAs in the United States, which are public use microdata areas. But we're looking at these things aggregated at an area level. You also find they have what's referring to as roster data here. So those are more spatial grids. That's used in a lot of like environmental studies type work. So that would be another area that you could go to if you're interested in looking at different levels of data. We're going to focus on an area level extraction, and so I'm going to show you how you actually go through doing that. So out of the different outputs here, I'm going to actually go to start extract at the area level. As it's preloading the data, one of the first things you'll go through and do is actually select the data set that you want to use. So if you see over here on the far right side for the browse data sets, you have them for all around the world, places that you can look at. What we're going to focus on for this article is just one particular data set, so I'm actually focusing on North America. More specifically, I'm focusing on the United States. So when I select the United States, it's going to pop up all the different data sets that I can pull from there. I'm going to focus on the most recent, being 2015, which would be the American Communities Survey. So once I've selected the data set, now I can actually start to look at what variables do I want to pull from that data set. So if you see over here on the far left side now, this is where all the variables are. So one of the things I would suggest when you're in this view is to actually start by selecting this Show Only Selected Datasets button here. What this is going to do is just streamline so you're only looking at one particular data set. I'm not going to hit the Show Only Selected Variables because we haven't selected any yet, and we want to be able to see them to select them. So in looking at the variables that we want to pull up, some of the variables that you can go to have to do with birthplace and nativity. When you select them, you'll see there's kind of the main stem of these variables, but this 6 in the parentheses is then telling me there's 6 variables I can pull out of this. The green dot over here tells me that they're actually a part of this data set. You'll find that when you look at some of the variables here, they're actually not involved in all data sets because this is meant to work for all the data sets in here. So you have to be careful in that you're actually selecting variables that are in the data set that you've selected. So in terms of what we have here, you have variables of, with a green dot on the side here, the number of foreign-born persons. You have the number of females who are born in a foreign country, number of males born in a foreign country, native-born persons, and again breaking that down by gender groups. So the one that I'm going to select for this is actually just the foreign-born persons. and the native-born persons. Again, you could select more variables if you wanted to. Under demographic, some of the variables that we'll be interested to look at would be, first off, having a population. So that'll tell me specifically how many people there are in each of these spatial units that we have, which is useful because they're about 100,000, but they're not exactly. So being able to know that count will help us to develop proportions if we want to for some of the things. We can also look at the population then, broken down by sex, by age, and by the mixture of sex and age. You also have marital status here, and those are the main variables that you have. We're going to focus on just total population in this case. Again, you could add these other variables in if you wanted to. We'll select a number of educational variables because we decided that would be a good context for an article for educational folks. So those variables that we have here, we have these school age variables. So this is telling us the percent of people in different age ranges that are in school. So we're going to select each of those. You'll notice literacy by age is not a variable in this US data set, so we don't have that to select, but we do have variables for educational attainment, of which we will select all of them. And we're also going to select the variable of educational years. Associated with education is often employment, so we also want to pull some variables from employment. So we have the labor force by sex. Again, we haven't gotten any sex variables so far, so that's probably not the most useful one. Employment rate of children, you'll notice we don't have access to. The unemployment rate, though, is one that we would like to have. Workers in professional occupations will be useful for us, and also workers in agriculture and manufacturing. Household amenities. So audio, television, pretty standard. Notice neither one of them is in the 2015 one, so this is not a helpful category for us. Dwelling characteristics, so a number that you can come up with here. Again, most of these aren't really pertinent to what we're looking at, and also it's just the number of rooms that's in the IPUMSTerra. Household economic, home ownership. So the variables for this are the percent of houses that are owner-occupied and renter-occupied. These can be tied to wealth sometimes, so we'll pull those up. And we can look at household utilities. So we have electricity. So does the house have electricity, water, supply, sewage, telephone, internet? We're going to focus on internet since that's the most kind of current and applicable to the variables that we're looking at. And the last selection is urbanization, so percent of persons living in urban areas. But again, it's not in our data set. So now that we've gone through and we've selected these variables, you can see up here we've selected 18 variables in one data set. 18 is a pretty good number to start with. So from here, if I click the next button, what this is then going to do is going to take us to the next option that we have. So we're doing an area level data extract, but above area level data is roster data. So that is a level of data that we have the option of adding on to the area level data that we've already collected. In this case, though, we're not going to go ahead and do that. What we are going to do on this menu, though, is this is showing us our time frame, so we're dealing with a year specific, and you often want the lowest level available set here. And those are the defaults, so you don't need to worry about this too much. What that means in this case is that we're going to get PUMAs as our areas, which is the area that we'll discuss more in the article. Again, this next area that's going to come up is the option to select roster data, which we're going to skip over. And in fact, to skip over that, we can just get to the submit. For submit, we can type in what's the data set, what do we want to call this? I'm just going to call it Teaching Statistics. And we'll go ahead and submit the extract. So now, at this point when the extract is submitted, what's going to be happening is that it's going to go into our requests here. it might take a while for this to happen. So this could be something that potentially takes up to a day. I've never seen it take more than 2 days. So don't try to do this right before a class. This is something you want to do ahead of time. Sometimes it's very quick. You'll get an email as soon as that data extract is ready for you to take down. Once you get the data extract, it's going to come up as a zip folder. You'll have to unzip it, which most computers have as an applet that's already built in. And then the final thing you'll do is you'll select the .codap extension file to go into Codap. Those are all the steps you have to go through to pull down a data file. It takes a couple minutes to do it the first time, but the extracts get much easier, and you can really start to play with the variables that are available. Well, thank you for spending the time to listen to our video, and we hope you find it useful.